Okay, we'll do the 9th Mamer in the Parshas Chukas. Again, this is a difficult Mamer. It's the Kabbalah, the explaining the biur on the Mamer we learned before, and he's going to bring the sources of the Kabbalah, and we'll work it through step by step. So the Mamer begins with the biur inyan ali be'er chulu, the explaining of the idea of ali be'er that we said before. Biur ali be'er chulu. Hine mevur be'etz chaim tchilas shar manumad, in the Eitz Chaim, in the beginning of the shar of Mayim Nukvim Mayim Dechurim. We don't learn a lot of Kabbalah directly, but the Eitz Chaim is a whole book. The Eitz Chaim is the book for Rabbi Chaim Wolosow, the Torah of the Arizal. There's a whole book where it all explains all different inyonim. There's a lot of sha'arim there. There's a lot of prakim over there. This happens to be in the Shar Lametes Drush Aleph. That's where it is. That is the 39th gate in the first drush over there. There's many drushim in each gate. So over there, this is what he's basing himself on. Over there, it says that Shahaman de Nukva hu nimshach berechem shelo min amoyach shelo. He equates there, as the Rebbe will explain, the physical birth of a child, which has the participation both from the mother and the father. So we have the seed of the father in the womb of the mother, and we know that the seed from the father, as the Alter Rebbe says right away from the Tanya, comes from the moyach ha'av, comes from the brain of the av. There's also a seed of the mother, of the nukva, of the feminine. So he says, Shahaman the nukva, this is from the Eitz Chaim, that the mayim nukvim, the nukva, the feminine water, which is the zriya from the nukva, who nimshach berechem shalom min amoyach shalom. That extends to her womb from her mind, just like the fathers. K'moi shahamayim dechurim. Just like the masculine water, nimshach min amoyachim shaloi, comes from his moichin. Likewise, the feminine water comes from her moichin. Umevur shom. So over there it's explained. Shahaman the nukva. Over there it's explained that the mayim nukvim of the nukva, hu mehazayin melochim the toyu. That comes from the 7 kings of Toyu. We know there were the kings that we learned by Esav, Eila HaMelochim, Asher Molchu Lifnei Meloch Melech Libnei Yisrael. There was the 7 kings, and that was the Shviras HaKelim. That one from Toyu was the Shviras HaKelim. Mashenitba B'Klipa is V'loi Nizbarer Adayim. That is the Nukva. By the way, is what is the Bnei Yisrael. We're Knesset Yisrael. We're the feminine. This is Milmat Lamayla. So that sparks that came from the Zayim Elohim the Toyu, that went down into the Klippas, Nitbai was sunk into the Klippas, the line is Barer Adayim. That has not yet been sorted out. Vayidei Tfiloseinu, through our davening. Vayidei HaMitzvahs, and through the mitzvahs that we do. Mevarim umitzin umishom hanitzotzim. We sort out, we extract from there the sparks. Umailin oisom b'bchinas man, and we bring them up in a level of mayim nukvim. We elevate them. Ayin shom drush yud aleph siman zayin. So let's look at there the drush, not siman zayin. So what does it turn out? Shahaman shorshei b'chochmo the olam hatoyu. That the mayim nukvin's root comes from the level of chochma of olam hatoyu. Why we say chochma? Because shazayin melochim heim b'chinas hamoichin. Because the zayin melochim are from the level of moichin sheheim hachochma k'moi shekosuv Shom Beitz Chaim Drush Aleph, as it says over there in the Eitz Chaim in the first drush. So it's going to say that's why it's going to the Hamshach is going to explain that the Birurim brings it because they come from there, and the Birurim come to a very high place. But in the meantime, he explains Umashe Kosuv Shenimshach Min Hamoyach Shelo. So basically, Nukva is what? Is Malchus. The Nukva is Malchus. When we have the Zo, the Mayim Duchurim, that's Zo. Zo is the masculine, and Malchus is the Nukva. And we're talking about the Malchus, and we're saying her Moichin. So what is the Moichin of Malchus? So, and here we're saying Moichin of Keser. We're talking about here Moichin of Keser, but in the Eitz Chaim we said the Mayim Nukvim comes from her Moyach. Mashakosuf Shenimshach Min HaMoyach Shelo, that it comes from her Moyach. That would mean the Hainu Moichin, the Nukva, the Zod, the Atzilus, the Tikkun. That comes, that's the Moichin of Malchus, of Zo, of the Atzilus, the Tikkun. So it's not of Toyu. It's the Moichin of Nukvin, of Zo, the Atzilus, of another level of Keser. So Nizboyer b'mokem achar. So this has been explained elsewhere. Say, for example, just like physically, that the fact that the woman is mazriya, she the seed, although it comes from the moyach, from level mechin, mainly it comes from the food that she eats. So what happens? That the food gets sorted out, so that the food and the chayis that comes from the food goes up to her brain. And the moyach strengthens. So then it's completed and extends the man from her moyach into the womb, so that it should be the birth. So also with the Aleman. So this is actually the Berurim of Chochma de Toyu. Shemizbarim miklipas noiga. They are sorted out from klipas noiga. Be'oilin ad shenichlolim b'moichin the nukve da'atzilus. So they go up until they are included in the moichim of nukve da'atzilus. So that way, the man, from the moich comes down the man. Nimtzo akoponim haman shorshoy mechochma de toyu. So it means that at least we're saying that it comes from chochma de toyu. Basically, it starts with chochma de toyu, and then that comes down into the Michael, to the food. Food is klipas noiga. Like the most of the food is the klipas noiga. Through the Yid Zavoida with the Gashmis and Biyah and Zavoida, he elevates it, brings it up to the moichin of nukva d'atzilus, to the moichin of nukva d'atzilus, and then it gives the koyach of the mayim nukva for the hiloda, for the giving of the birth. So it's not a contradiction. So we know that it still comes, the shorshe comes from Chochm de Toyu. But then later on, through the elevation, it goes up to the Chochm of Nukva. Ein Shobetz Chaim, Mitziuson, Moichin, Shel Hanev, and the Keves Kulom. That over there it says that the Mitzius, the existence of Moichin and Keves Kulom, Mashma Shu Chochma, the Malchus de Toyu. So it's Mashma Chochma. So, again, whatever the exact level is in Toyu or Chochma Malchus de Toyu. Oh. Hine, the Chochma, the Toyu, Yesh Ha'oras HaKeser de Toyu. In the level of Chochma of Toyu, we have a shine of Keser of Toyu. Sharei HaChochma Ma'ayin Tamotze Shu B'chinas Keser. Just like we say when we talk about Atzilus, and we talk about the Chochma da Atzilus, so Chochma da Atzilus comes from Keser, and we call it Chochma, comes from Ayin. So when we talk about Toyu, same thing. The Chochma of Keser, of Atzilus, comes from the level of Keser of Toyu. The Chochma of Keser comes from Toyu, that's the Ayin. Shekol B'chol Mokoy, because any place we talk about, B'chinas HaMekeser Hu HaMechaber HaMaitzil Ein Sof Baruch Hu in HaNetzolim. The level of Keser is the connector that connects the Maitzil, the Ein Sof Baruch Hu in HaNetzolim. What is the first Netzol? Much is Rishusam. First is Chochma. So when we say about Keser, when we say about connecting Chochma with higher, that's through the level of Keser. So V'gam Kan. So also we hear the B'chinas Birur, the Rapach Nitzutzim the Toiga, the Nitzutzim the Toyu. When we're sorting out the 288 sparks that come from Toyu, Shebenoiga, that they fell down to the Klippas Noiga, Lalis B'chinas Man, to bring them up in a level of Mayim Nukvim, feminine water, Milmata Lamaila, from below. So Ma'achar Shechochma the Toyu, Hi HaMayim Nukvim. So since the Chochma of Toyu is the Mayim Nukvim, because that's the source of the feminine water, to bring it up, Im Kain, Gam B'chinas HaKeser the Toyu, Meir B'chinas. So therefore, also the Keser of Toyu is in this level of Chochma. Why? Shara B'chinas Keser the Toyu, Ub'chinas Memutza Shal Yodoi Nimshach Ha'oir B'chochma the Toyu. Because the Keser of Toyu is the intermediary through which the oil comes in Chochma the Toyu. So it has to go through Keser. K'moishe Keser de Tikkun u'memutza b'mkoimei. Just like the Keser of Tikkun is in the place of Tikkun. Keser is the connector. So the same thing is Keser in Toyu is the connector from the Ein Sof with Keser, with Toyu. I mean, it's connected with the Chochma of Toyu. Keser is the connector. In Tikkun, they became faces, which means there is a skalalus. There is the midas are one with the other. Becomes a whole parts of a face, a whole combination. Over there, they were in a way of dots, one underneath the other, and that's why there wasn't able to stand. That's why there was the shvira. So V'harazu This ha'ore that comes from Chochmah of Keser, from Chochmah of Toyu, which has Keser in it, he gavoya gam Chochmah bina the Toyu, the Tikkun. This is higher than the Chochmah bina of Tikkun. Ki betoyu hoyu hoyres merub mechulu, because in Toyu there was lots of lights. So now this is the two levels. Zo inyan be'er mayim chayim. It's because before you have the well, that's milshocha milmayla lemata, and then you have the be'er mayim chayim that comes the well from below to above, which is the birur, the mayim nukvin, which have in itself the level of keser, of toyu, in the chesed. Shu b'chinas halos mayim nukvin the nukvin. That's the lo mayim nukvin. About this, it says in the future, from that day, Mayim Chaim will come to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, that is Malchus. That's the level of the Mayim Nukvin that come from Yerushalayim. Half of it goes to Yom HaKadmoni, Shu Bina de Tikkun. Goes to the level of Bina of Tikkun. In other words, elevated back to the level of Bina. So over there he says, Man choma chafiro de beira, who saw the digging of the bear, and v'nichta b'tzidum Rabbi Chaim Vital, he writes on the side over there, be'er chafaruha, that this is referring to this well that the pasuk is talking about here in the Parshas Chukas, the be'er chafaruha that was dug. Who saw the digging of this pit? Yoiv mayin lemabua the Neviah Bino Datzilus. Who gave it the water to the flow that Bino Datzilus? In other words, that it turns out so who can give? We're saying Chafaruha. They dug it, and you bring up the water, and it goes up all the way to Bina, to Aretz HaKeser. How is that done? That's done through Lamata. And the idea of the term, through the man comes Keser Chochma Bina Toyu. They're in a higher level of Keser Chochma Bina of Tikkun. The Be'er Chafaruha, through the digging, through the Mayim Nukvim, through the Sarusa de Latato, the water goes up to the level of Bina Datzilus. Why? Because their shorish is from Keser Chochma Bina of Toyu, which is higher than the Bina by itself. So we have both in Yonim here. It's going to explain now. We have both in Yonim. We have the Hamshoche, the way it's milmailo lemato, which is the level of the mayon. So, but there the order is, it comes from the higher to the lower. It comes from keser, and then it goes to chokhmah and bina. The return is dafke from the lowest. You're going from the lowest to the highest. Let's look inside. So let's understand explaining this idea. It says in the Sefer Aboyim, sheyesh eser sfiris milmaylo lemato. There's the 10 spheres from above to below, and then milmato lemaylo, and from below to above. Milmaylo lemato yodainu. We know what is from above to below. We know. Milmato lemaylo lo yodainu, but we don't know what is it from below to above. Uva bepardus shar milmato lemaylo. Uva eitz chaim soif shar man umad. So over there it says shehein b'chinas. These are the eser spheres, the yoshor, the straight light, the eser spheres, the choizer, and the 10 spheres of the returning light. And over there we say, V'shebe'eses Sfiris, the Erchoizer HaMalchus Keser. In the returning light, the Malchus becomes the Keser. That becomes the highest level. Ayim Asher Isbar Le'il Mizeh Bebiur HaPosik V'inei Minei Rezov U'Bebiur HaPosik Hi Al Kveid Kol Kveid Chupa B'Sefer. All right. So, Inyan, and this is the two levels, Melmaila Lamata, Melmata Lamaila, the Mayon Ganim, the well of the gardens, Ube'er Mayim Chaim, and the well of the living water. Kihine Inyan Mayin Ganim, what is the well that waters the gardens? That is Hainu Bina Datzilus. That is Bina Datzilus. That waters the gardens, which means that brings the Amshoch into Gan Eden and Gan Eden Tacht. Shenikra Gamkein. Bina Atzilus is also referred to as Yam HaKadmoini. Sheyoredes Libya. It goes down to Bia. Aidei Slapshus Utchila B'Malchus Datzilus. First, Bina descends into Malchus Datzilus. Shenase Atik Libria becomes the Keser for Bria, the Atik for Bria. And from that level of Bina extends that which the souls enjoy in Gan Eden. Because the mother, Bina, nests in the couch, in the chair, which is considered level of Bria. So that brings the Hanoah from the level of Bina into Bria, into Gan Eden. That is what gives the upper Gan Eden. Now, then it goes further. This well continues and flows and extends out. So Malchus de Bria, the Malchus of Bria, Nasi Atiku Moker Aneveya Li Yitzira. That flows to Yitzira. And then Malchus the Yitzira, Atik, Umoker Shemimenu Neveya becomes a Keser, an Atik, and a source from which the Mayan goes down. La Asiya. Laganei Natach. Not sure why he says here the Gan Eden Tachten in Asiya. Technically, Gan Eden Tachten is in Yitzira. Bria is Gan Eden Elyon. And he says, but there's also the Gan Eden Tachten in Asiya, as where Adam Arishon was put in Gan Eden Tachten. So, where does this Mayan come from? The Etzem Mayan Zeh. So this Mayan goes down to Bria, to Yitzira, to Asiya. But the essence of this Mayan, who Bina Datzilus, is the level of Bina Datzilus. Okay, the Pirush Bezoyhar, Soy Parshas Hazino. As the Zohar said in the end of the portion of Hazino, Daf Reish Tzadik Ches Amud Aleph, the Mayan Ganim, that this Mayan Ganim, Ubchinas B'Nohor Yotzei Me'edem Lahashkes and Sagon. That is the river which is the level of Bina, comes from the Eden to water the garden. So the garden, here we're talking about the garden, even the physical garden, in Asiya, all the gardens. B'Sham Pirush, Abdir explains, it says, Nor Yetz Me'edem Lahashkes Esagon. Doesn't say Lahashkes Hagon, it says Esagon. So he explains that when it says Hagan, that is from Shemayim. That's the Gan of Shemayim. Then when it says Es Hagan, that is Lachlolo, that is to include Es Haaretz. Because both Ganim, Bahainu, Ki Shemayim v'Haaretz, Nikra Gan Eden Elyon v'Tachten. This is the upper and the lower Gan Eden. Kinoida me'inyan Mili b'shamayim v'imcho lechafatzti b'oretz. So there we say, who is in the heavens? I don't want the earth. So what does the heavens mean? Gan Eden Elyon. What is lechafatzti b'oretz? That means Gan Eden Atachten. That is the Es Hagon, the Gan Shemayim, and Es Hagon is the Oretz, which is the both of the Gan Eden. They all come from that Mayan. Ein Gam Kim Bezer Se Parshas Bolok, Daf Reshut Beis Soifam at Beis. The Chochmu Bina Nikroi Mayone HaYeshua. So that the level of Chochmu Bina are called the wells of salvation. So over here it relates to this Gan of Bina over here, which is also Chochma as well, and it's Mayone, plural of the issue. Hine Hashevach Hazeh de Mayin Ganim al Knesset Yisrael. Al Knesset Yisrael Nema. We say that they're Mayin Ganim. This is talking about the Yidden. Knesset Yisrael. She Malchus Datzilus, which is the level of Malchus Datzilus. Av Shamayin Umchinas Bina. Even though the mind is level of Bina, and yet we're saying that they're the Mayan Ganim, that this is the well is Malchus. Ach Kedei Sheyumshach la'aganim, because in order for it to come down to the actual ganim, it comes down to Malchus Datzilus. In other words, from the Bina, it can't come down to the garden without going through Malchus Datzilus. Because Malchus is the intermediary which brings down the Nisob Baruch Hu from Atzilus to Bria. Malchus the Atzilus nase keser lebria. That becomes the keser for Bria, and keser umemutza. Im came, and if so, since we need the level of keser, we need the level of Malchus in order to bring it down to the level of the Gan Eden. So that's why that's called the main. That's why they're the main Ganim. He ikar bechinas main Ganim. So that's why Malchus is the main main Ganim. I'm ashkos mizeh pashvas chana poskel matirachul. So inyan eses sfiras milmayla lamata. And this is the idea of the 10 sfiras milmata lamayla. Shemayon zeh nimshech. The mayon comes mikeser chochma binu de tikun. That comes from keser chochma binu tikun. Ki anor yoytze me'eden. For the nor comes from Eden shul chochma shemayin temotzi. So this comes from the level of Chochma, comes to Bina, and Vegam is Galus Atik hu b'Bina, and then Atik comes in Bina, which means first the Keser comes from Bina, Chochma comes from Bina, and also Atik comes in Bina. So that's all the level of Tikkun of Keser Chochma Bino as they come from Tikkun. V'nimshach milmayla lemata lebchinas Malchus da'atzilus v'nasis Atik lebria, and that becomes a Keser for Bria umashke Gan Eden Elyon v'tachton. That's the way it comes milmayla lemata. And then we're going to discuss how it goes back through the Biru, through the Be'er, Ma'im Chaim. Zo shekosu ki kula mashke ki gan Hashem chulu. Ayim bezoyer chelkalav kuftes aleph, v'ayim beroches, v'ayim berabis, parsha mem aleph, pirush b'inyan acher. Okay, we'll leave it over here, and then we'll see the second step of it.